We'll give you a few instructions in a minute, but the first thing we get to do is really the highlight for me is to get to hear from our speaker. Each week we're going to have a different speaker from within the congregation. And our speaker tonight really could have talked about any of the 5 weeks, but food fits too. And it's Jorge Martinez, who is in fact, you could define him as an immigrant, that his family came for asylum, as refugees, depends on how you want to define it. As a, how old are you then? 7 from Cuba. George, I got to know when his family first moved here, but one of the real privileges I had, and he's not going to go into that, is he was the XO, if you don't know that, on the Coast Guard Eagle, as he had a full career with the Coast Guard. And I had the great privilege of, George had me come out with them to go from North Carolina up to New London, Connecticut on the Eagle, which was just an amazing thing. And he spent 2 years?
2 years.
2 years as the XO on the Eagle. And George is just a remarkable individual. And I'm not going to say any more. He's going to tell us some story related to food. And, well, yeah. Thank you. Jorge Martinez.
By the way, the food on the Eagle was terrible. So
The oatmeal.
The oatmeal was good?
No, that was bad.
Okay, that's right. So if you screwed up oatmeal, imagine the rest. It's all downhill from there. So about, I don't know, a month ago or so, Peter had asked me to talk to you all, and I agreed. And I said, well, what's the topic that you want me to discuss? And he said food. And I thought, well, I'm 5'6" and about 150 pounds. Are you sure I'm the best person to give an inspiring talk about food? But he was adamant, and so here I am. So I'll share a little bit of my food story and really how it intersects with faith, which is I think what we're talking about. And you know, if we want to keep the alliteration going, it's for me it's food, faith, you know, family, friends, and at the end of the day, fellowship, which I think is kind of what we're talking about. So. My relationship with food did not start out so great. As Peter mentioned, I was born in Cuba, and there was just not a lot of food options. And to make things even worse, I was really picky. So there was limited amount of food, and I was really picky. So my food journey did not start out well. Interestingly enough, and as many of you probably do know, not a whole lot of religion in Cuba either. So that whole food faith thing was not one of the finer points as my life began. But at the end of the 70s, as Peter kind of alluded to, we moved to the United States, and I was 7.5 at the time, and we flew in to Canada. And I remember that day very vividly, as you would expect I would. Obviously, I don't even know where we flew into. It could have been Toronto, maybe it was Quebec, I'm not sure. But my aunt and uncle picked us up there, and they lived in New Jersey, which was the plan the entire time. So we took a little while to clear through customs for several reasons, and then we made it, and had been a long day. Actually, it was night, and we pulled into a diner in the middle of the night, and so that was my first introduction to American food. Again, you know, very picky, didn't really know anything about American food, and so for me, what was ordered was a hamburger. And I look at this thing, and it's got like, well, I recognize the bread, so score, that's good, made me comfortable. And then on top of it are these little black things, and I didn't know what that was. And so I asked my aunt and uncle, like, why is there dirt on top of my food? And then of course they thought that was pretty funny, but I was serious. I'm like, I'm not eating that. I tried, because if I didn't, I would have gotten immediate feedback from my mother. You know, with Cuban mothers, that happens. So I took a bite begrudgingly, and then that was the end of my first encounter with the wonderful American cuisine. For the record, I love hamburgers. So, but not my very first one. I just wasn't ready. So keep going on that journey, and actually we'll continue with the car ride. Many more hours later, we end up in New Jersey. And the first 7 months of my life were here in the United States, and our families were spent in the basement of my aunt and uncle. And they were people of faith. They still are. They're Baptists, they're in their 90s, and they're still doing well. I just saw them a couple of months ago, as a matter of fact. So every Sunday we would go to church with them. And that was wonderful. And I think that is when food and faith first intersected for me. And I remember, so the church was really, they rented the basement of an established American church. It was in Spanish. And you would set up the folding chairs, you would go through the actual service, And then when it was done, all the folding chairs would get put away, and then the tables would come out. There's a little kitchen in the back, and then all the food would come out. And that was wonderful. So you had the adults there enjoying each other's company and fellowship. You had all the kids having a great time running around, being crazy as, typical children tend to be, and even somebody as picky as me could find something delectable to eat. So that was wonderful, and that was really the first, this feels good. This whole food faith journey really does feel good. And in their basement where we lived for the first 7 months, there was always gatherings there, right? Even when we lived there and after we moved out for years to come, whether it was Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, you name it. Same tables would come out, same delicious food would come out, the same old tired stories would come out. But it was wonderful, and it was always started out with prayer because they're a family of faith. We all were a family of faith. And again, it just felt good, it just felt right. And so that's a little bit of the food and faith for me, and really the fellowship, and family and fellowship, which is probably the biggest piece. And then I think about this church and where that story intersects. And I know you all have them all, and I'm sure we'll probably be talking about it today. I certainly do. I'll even share a recent one, just First Serve this past year. I was working at a church with Pastor Rodney, who's wonderful for those of you that know him. And we were all working outside, doing some external repairs on his church. And of course, he's out there grilling. He's out there grilling, just all sorts of things that he probably shouldn't even have done, because that's more money out of his pocket, the church pocket. But he knows it's all about the fellowship. It makes you feel good. And of course, as you're grilling, we're just talking, just having a good time. It breaks down barriers. Absolutely wonderful. I think about First Serve. I just said First Serve. I think about ASP, right? And for those of you that have been to ASP, you know what I'm talking about. The work that we do there is great, but really where the goodness, the richness comes in, at least for me, is in 2 times. Not so much breakfast, because the kids are a little ornery and getting woken up at 7 o'clock is really not their thing. But at lunch, when you just take a break and you read the devotional and you talk about what you're doing and you're breaking bread, literally breaking it because it's pretty hard and crusty and really not great. But the purpose of fellowship and just relaxing and being able to kind of think about what it is that we're doing and just reflecting, that is wonderful. At night, when you meet as the entire congregation does, or the entire folks that are there, and again, just talk about how was your day today? Just being humans, just connecting. That is just a critical piece, and that all really comes together, I think, with the food. So in closing, I'm going to share a poem with you that I absolutely love, which speaks indirectly, but I think pretty profoundly to what we're talking about today. And it was written by a Native American. Her name is Joy Harjo, and it's called "Perhaps the World Ends Here." So, the world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies' teeth at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions at what it means to be human. We make men at it. We make women. At this table, we gossip, recall enemies and the ghost of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor, falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the table. This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory. We have given birth on this table. We have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite. So, hope you enjoyed it. That's it.